All right, so now we are going to pivot towards graduate fellowships that are designed for folks who are midstream in their graduate program. And the first one will be introduced by Chris Peter, who's Research Director at Great Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. And he'll give you an overview of the program. And then we have Ann Lowen, who is working in this fellowship, the Margaret Davidson Fellowship. Currently, she can share her experience. So I'll hand it over to Chris.
Thanks, Eric. I'm going to go to PowerPoint. I'm going to share my screen, so hopefully people see this. Before I start, I probably won't be able to see this until later because I'm sharing my whole screen, but have people heard of a NERR? Oh, I'm on the very last slide here, of course. Yeah, I like to go backwards when I present. Maybe you can put your hand up if you've heard of an NERR or worked in one or used any of our data, because I can actually see you guys. Okay, well, I didn't think there was a whole lot. There's a couple of hands up. Good. Well, I'm here to talk about if you're not really ready to jump in the workforce, you just really want to stay in school. This is a graduate fellowship, so it can be for a master's or a PhD. And this one is also in the Office of Coastal Management, but it's designed and really at a National Estuarine Research Reserve, which is what the NERR stands for. And if you do one at Great Bay, you obviously get a free shirt, as everyone is pictured here wearing one. And I'm going to jump into the details. Before I do that, oops, sorry for that noise. I'm going to just jump into what an NERR is, because some people don't know what it is. It's a network of 29 reserves, National Estuarine Research Reserves around the country. And we don't put our eggs in just one basket of research. We put them in a whole bunch of baskets. So we have research, we have stewardship and land management. We also are active in education and also coastal training, which is basically bringing science to decision and policymakers. So we just like to split our attention and staff and resources into all these different areas, which is great because you can dabble in and out and not just be in one silo. Jumping into the Davidson Fellowship, the Margaret A. Davidson Fellowship, or sometimes affectionately named MAD. It's a 2-year fellowship, so it's offered every 2 years. It was Anna, who's going to talk after me. She started this fall in 2020, so the next one will be 2022. In one reserve, or every reserve, sorry, gets one fellow. And it focuses on coastal research that addresses a local management and research question. It provides skill building, so like a lot of training. Of course, a lot of it's virtual this year, unfortunately, and networking. So you get to network with the reserve sectors and local partners, and with the cohort of other mentors around the country. So it's pretty interesting groups that you get to kind of network with. And the funding, well, there's a stipend of $34,000 annually, and it's a 2-year. So this, happens over 2 years, and you get double this. That's just showing one, and you get a travel pot of $7,000, and then the $7,000 extra comes to the reserve, and they spend it on equipment and supplies to support the fellow. And then for people that know what IDC stands for, it's just the university likes to take a cut of any grants that come into there. So we kind of estimate about 20,000 goes to the university, but from what the students really need to focus on will probably be the first 3 lines up at the top. Just quickly on timeline, like I said, it won't start into the fall of 2022, but the RFP, the proposal will open in the summer of 2021. So if you're looking to apply for this, I would interact with reserves that you're interested in and tailor your application, starting this coming summer, because it is due in the winter of the end of next year. I think I touched upon this a little bit, but I'll just go over brief a little bit more. The main requirements is it's research that's conducted at a reserve and informs local management. So it cannot just be like a research that there's no actual management you can take. So it has to be something that you can actually take to improve, maybe let's say oyster populations or seagrass beds. And the other key requirement is a mentor aspect of this program. And fellows are supposed to attend an annual meeting, and hopefully the next one will be at I think in Seattle, Washington. So it kind of rotates around the country, which is pretty cool because you get to see different parts of the country the longer in the system. And I think the one after that is in New Jersey and Hawaii. So if you're really interested in going to Hawaii, you might want to stick around for that one. Just some examples of some research themes from across the country. I just listed these, and I just had a conversation with the research director at Wells this morning. I just brought this up and kind of came up with a list that kind of hit Great Bay and Wells, and I kind of highlighted in green what Great Bay is focused on. And when there's multiple colors, that means Wells and Great Bay share that. And I'm sorry, Wells is the reserve right in Wells, Maine, so what, 45 minutes away from here. So if you're interested in doing a fellowship in, southern Maine or New England or New Hampshire, these are two, sets of research questions that you might want to look at. So climate change, nutrients and water quality, restoration based species, and you can look at other reserves management issues. We have them linked. I'll link it later. I think the last slide that's a reminder for me to do that. I'll kind of just quickly jump into that just because I think I'm running out of time. But I'll enter this into the chat box shortly after. And if you are interested in this fellowship, I encourage you to check out this link. There is a lot of frequently asked questions. There's a recorded webinar. There's a lot of resources on there. And I also just encourage you to contact me if you have any questions, especially about Great Bay and the research questions here, or other reserves if you're interested in going in looking at their research topics. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first fellow, Anna Lewin, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Hi, everybody. So as Chris said, my name's Anna Lewin. I'm a master's student who's planning to stay on for a PhD at the University of New Hampshire. And I just started this fellowship in August of this year, and I'll be at the Great Bay until July of 2022. And so just a little bit about my background and why I applied for this fellowship in particular. I got my undergrad in Maryland in environmental science and policy, and I came up to UNH to study natural resources and specifically ecosystem sciences and aquatic systems like estuaries. And I particularly applied for this fellowship program because I have an end goal of working for a reserve system and being kind of within that community and working at one of the 29 reserves in the future. And so for me, applying to this was a great way to meet more people from the reserve system, get to know them, get them to know me, and hopefully set myself up to be successful in the future and working as maybe a research coordinator later in my career. And so if you are thinking about kind of whether or not you want to go into academia or work for a government agency or work for a national estuarine research reserve or go into like nonprofit work, I think this fellowship is a really great fit because it encourages a collaborative science approach where you engage end users of your research. So whether that's the local municipalities or other nonprofits working on similar issues, you're encouraged to work with those people and talk to them and apply your research to that problem you're focused on. And so it creates a lot of opportunities to meet people, not only in the reserve system, but in other agencies. Like I heard PREP was mentioned earlier, the Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership. So that's an example of I work with them a little bit also. You can engage with other researchers at your university or with volunteer groups. So like the Great Bay Reserve has a friends group that and a really strong volunteer program. And so I'm planning to work with them a decent amount. And so if you're interested in working on a research problem, but also working on that problem to help communities make decisions and apply your work towards solving the problem, then I think this is a good fit. And so specifically, I guess what I'm working on is I'm studying biogeochemical cycles in Great Bay. And so I'm trying to quantify how the estuary processes nitrogen and where it goes once it comes into the system. And this is really relevant for the community because there's a lot of kind of debate over wastewater treatment plant upgrades in the region and whether or not nitrogen from those treatment plants is influencing the health of the estuary through eelgrass bed decline. And so the community is really invested in this problem, as is a lot of research entities and organizations like PrEP and Great Bay. And so I'm kind of this one person trying to integrate a lot of those perspectives into what I'm working on. And then just briefly, some of the cool things that I get to do because of this fellowship. I just finished collaborative science research training. It was virtual this year, but it was this huge panel of people from all over the country who put it together, and we talked a lot about how do you engage end users of your research, who are end users of your research, how do you create questions to look into that people are going to care about, and then also how do you integrate different people's ideas and perspectives into one big collaborative science framework. And that's really important because everyone approaches these kind of local place-based problems a little bit differently. And so being able to integrate their ideas and the way they see the world is really important to creating a successful collaborative science project. And my advice for if you wanted to apply for this would be, don't be afraid to reach out to the NERRs, to the research coordinators, the managers, education coordinators, set up some time to talk about ideas, because when you apply, you have to talk about why your research matters and why stakeholders in the community would be invested in it. And so by talking to the research team at Research Reserve or whoever at the Research Reserve, you can kind of get a sense of like what is important to them or not. And that helps inform what you might write about in your application. And so don't be afraid to talk to them. They love talking to people. Don't be afraid to follow up, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and like get invested in the community you're interested in. And so I guess I'll just end with, I had the benefit of, I was up here, so I knew a lot about Great Bay Estuary and the Research Reserve, but you can apply to any of the 29. And so if you're want to apply to one where you don't know the area as well, or you've never been there, it's really important to talk to people from that reserve and figure out what's important to them and get a sense of the community there, because it is place-based science. I think with that, I think that's all I have.
We have time for a couple questions if there are some right now. Just some great tips and an awesome fellowship.
I just wanted to confirm the timeline. So the application process starts in the summer and then it's due in the winter of 2021.
Yeah, that's correct. So it will start to be posted, I believe, this coming summer of 2021, and then it should be due sometime around the winter. I think last winter it was due in December. Does that sound about right, Anna? And then, yeah, and then it usually starts August 1st or September 1st the next year, so 2022, depending on the university you attend. I think some of them are a little bit different. So that's kind of the rough timeline.
All right, thank you.
Yep. One thing I wanted to add to Anna's tips, because I didn't offer any tips, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't, but I will anyways, is that it's, scientific merit is hugely important, but also equally important is local relevance. So when you're looking at a different NERR, looking at their research questions, you have to kind of tailor your research to one of their research questions. So if you're doing work in, with seals or something, and we don't have a real one that applies in Great Bay, you might want to look at different parts of the country that have it. And when you do find a question that kind of addresses it, and just dig in with that. The research coordinator, I would start there first, and they might, direct you to other, local partners, and just try to cater it, because it's really about local relevance and scientific merit.
Some pro tips there.